Hello, welcome to the Big 12 Mafia Show. I'm your host, Nathan Bomber Brown. With me are all my contributing editors. That's what we're going to call them
Ooh.
today. That would be the Wild Ute,
What's up?
Immaculate View, and Moen After Dark. How we doing, guys?
Excellent. Doing good. Good night.
It was a big news day, so we're not going to spend a lot of time in preparation for that. I just want to let everybody know we really appreciate you being here. Tuesday nights are generally slow, and our show is growing every day, and we appreciate everybody being here. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and turn on your notifications, and then follow us all on Twitter. And make sure you can find us again, because that's the most important thing is we get these repeat people watching, and that's how people have fun with us. All right. Before we dive into anything really heavy, let's do a quick roundabout. Let's see, what did you learn over the weekend, and what do we know today we didn't know yesterday?
I learned something that we will reveal here in a week or two. I learned how strong a candidate Georgia Tech is to the Big Ten. So, little neener action and everything. Everybody's going to have to wait a few weeks to see it, but the analysis.
Everything to drink, but
You got to love the tease. I love the tease.
So, Georgia Tech, yeah, how strong are they? Y'all find out soon.
I've been talking.
You're going to get your turn, Immaculate. I
know.
I'm just holding
I
my
got
breath,
patience.
all right?
I'm sitting there going, oh, man, the numbers guy sees it, so we're good now.
Right. Moen, how about you? What have you learned today you didn't know yesterday?
That Schultz will fold faster than Superman on laundry day.
Oh, boy. Okay. And out of nowhere, coming in off the bench,
Right.
we have Sergeant
Perfect
Pickles.
timing.
How we doing, Pickles?
How much fun did I miss so far?
The best
just
part,
missed a
you're
doozy.
late to the show and everything else.
Yeah,
How'd your show go last night? Tell everybody about your show.
So we had our second ever Big West Mafia show yesterday, and Immaculate graced us with his presence. And
That was fun.
we definitely got into the first kind of hard look, I'd say, at NCAA 25, and we're excited. It seems like there's infinite personalities, but there's also a lot of news relevant to West Coast football, what's going on, and we're coming up to transfer portals, spring practices, and everything else. So if you have any interest in the 4 teams coming into the Big Ten and college football news as a whole, catch us on Mondays, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific.
We'd love to have you here. We have a guest coming on at top of the hour, so we'll have you sign out then. Is that good for you?
That was my plan all along.
All right, look at that. We work together. That's the way we do things around here. It's teamwork. All right, Immaculate, you're the last one to get the baton. Why don't you kind of tell everybody what we're going to be talking about tonight and why it's so important?
Well, I think everyone kind of probably has a good idea. We're going to be talking some CFP tonight. It was a pretty big day. We finally got some movement, and we're all going to give our thoughts on it, talk about some of the news releases for some of you who maybe hasn't seen that yet and doesn't know what I'm talking about. But that's probably going to take a pretty good amount of time, and then we'll get your guys' thoughts on it, and then we'll see if we got any room for anything else before his guest comes on tonight.
All right, well, then let's just dive in there. We're talking about the news today. It was then the header for the show. Let me bring up that so everybody can see what we're talking about on the actual article. That would be, I have 2 of them. I have the ESPN article, which I'll share the link. Then we also have the one for Yahoo Sports, Ross Dellinger. But first of all, I want to start with this one because I really like the header, and it really says everything. What does this 5-7 mean to everybody?
It means there is more stability in the G5 going forward over the next 5, 7, 10 years, whereas there could have been massive instability if the 6-6 model would have remained, because there's no guarantee after the next 2 years that 6-6 model would have continued on. And now the 5-7 model, which allows for a G5 spot, will continue on for many years to come. So the G5 has access to the college football playoffs. So it's a huge win for the G5.
And everybody needs to know, just because they agreed to this, there still has to be a formal vote of the entire council, unless that was done today, Immaculate.
Yeah, and I understand why you're questioning that, because they were opposite of how
Right.
they normally hold their meetings. Usually it's the commissioners first, then the board votes. But this time they actually had the board vote first and the commissioners are meeting tomorrow, which is a whole other conversation about what that could possibly mean. But yep, they had the vote today. It is now official. It is 5+7.
All right, very good. The other thing that we want to note is this only covers for the next 2 years, right? Moen, or is there anything else we need to be concerned about outside just the 2-year term with this agreement?
Well, yeah, you have to be concerned with what's going on the other side of it. We're at 2 years now. What happens 2 years from now is the gigantic question in the room. All they've resolved is for this 2 years. Nothing else has been resolved. So we've still got the gold rush of 2026 on. We've still got to figure out where everybody's going to end up at.
All right, very good. I posted the link to that article. Everybody could go to it, read it themselves. It's a good one. Heather Dinich has done a fantastic job reporting. The second article that we have called up, both cross over and cover individual pieces, but there's a couple headlines out of these that I want to make sure everybody knew about. For one thing, what's this? Let me just read it. Potential proposals for Big Ten SEC seek more CFP automatic qualifier spots for the conferences. I know this is important to both you and I because Utah and BYU are on the outside looking in. What does this mean for these schools that aren't included in those two conferences?
Let's hear the takes from the Big Ten guys first here. I'd love to hear their thoughts on this. So I don't hear Moen's thoughts on this first.
What do you need to hear my thoughts on? I'm sorry, I was in night pot.
Oh, no, that's fine. So yeah, what's your thoughts on the multiple automatic qualifiers going to the Big Ten and the SEC potentially?
This is a negotiating position. They're starting at 4 because that's the number that they can be walked back from. We're starting at 4. They're going to say no. We're going to say we're sticking at 4. They're going to say, well, how about we just give you 3? And the Big Ten will say, well, we really want 4, but we want a larger revenue share. Well, you won't get a larger revenue share, and we don't want that. So eventually it's going to get down to they're going to get 2 automatic qualifiers, and they're going to get a larger revenue share.
Yep. What do you think,
All
Immaculate?
Right. I think he's right about that. Me personally, I think the 4 number is ridiculous. But from what he's saying, I get it from like a business negotiation standpoint, why they're doing this. And I know people are sitting there going, oh my God, they're going to try and get this. It's like, guys, you never get the big ask. You get something less than that. You don't, if you want, like he's saying, 2 and extra revenue, you don't start at 2 and extra revenue. And you probably don't even start at 3 because you're asking for 2 things. So the 4 makes sense, but I totally get why people would be upset about it. It's just when it hits your ears or your eyes or whatever it is, it just seems ridiculous.
Well, we need more teams. Just jump it to 16 teams, and then a lot of that anxiety goes away. Give the ACC and Big 12 a couple of guaranteed spots, and everything else is open.
The chatter is concerning from the Big 12 perspective here. Because let's just say hypothetically the 4-4 did happen, right? I agree with Immaculate that that's negotiation ploy and everything, but guess who's got all the leverage? The Big Ten and the SEC. So say that actually did happen and you get 8 freaking teams in those 2 conferences, automatic qualifiers in a 12-team playoff. That is 75% of the field. Like, I don't think it's going to happen like that, but that's what's being talked about. You know, like in these kind of discussions that are talked about, you know, happen when you have leverage. So I wouldn't be surprised at all to see multiple qualifiers. The thing is, if you're the Big 12, you have to fight for multiple qualifiers as well. I mean, I think making a 3-3 scenario where the Big 12 may get 2, but the SEC and the Big 10 get 3 is the ideal scenario. It's going to be super heated, though, in those meetings that are going on. And like it's a huge deal too. I mean, having multiple automatic qualifying berths. What's the point of having a conference championship game, guys? If you've got multiple berths, like forget that. You're just risking injury.
You're hurting yourself. Yeah,
I've been a proponent for the conference champions staying, but that's a good point, and that would have to be questioned if this thing goes as it goes. And I don't believe it'll go this way, and I actually think that this thing is going to end as we know it in 26. But if what they're saying is true, yeah, the conference championships have very little point at that point.
Let's get
Right,
to
like-
sorry, go ahead. I'll let
Yeah,
you
like
finish.
so. Here's the thought process, though. If we're going to make these bigger conferences, if we're going to get up to 20 teams, like we all think on this panel that eventually happens, really, are your pod champions going to be automatic qualifiers? Are you going to have 4 pods of 20 teams, say, and then each pod champ just gets in? I mean, we're going to a place where that makes a lot of sense.
Kind of sounds a
Really
lot
think
like a
about it.
conference tournament to me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know the conference tournament thing. Everybody knows where I sit with that
I
one
know,
too.
I know. But I'm just saying, like,
people-
even internally in the playoff, it sounds
right.
almost in the same direction.
Let's get to some business here. We've got a lot of people watching. We're 85 people watching us live. Let's get to a few items of business. First of all, Rock and Rant. Rock and Rant becomes a YouTube member. Good to have you here, Rock and Rant. What do we know about Rock and Rant there, Moen?
They're a Miami guy, and they just renewed their membership on Wise Guy status.
Thank you.
They also, if you go
Ooh.
down a little bit,
You bet.
Rock and Rant has also gifted a
Yes.
membership to the community, and that went to W. Jason Spangler, and he's already thanked Rock and Rant in the chat. That's way to go, Jason. That's the way we like to do it around here. Thank you so much, Rock and Rant.
there.
That makes you a
What is it? A
Winner.
Hey, Rock and Rant, thanks for sticking around, man. We loved having you here, and we'll boy, that Miami show, I still want to do that with you. I know you're not really excited about going online and being on the show, but I'd love to have you. We need to have that show.
Hey, Rock and Rant, we've got a gift for you coming up probably on this Saturday because we're dropping that Miami to the big fit video. Finishing up that one up here, so it should be ready for this weekend. So I hope you enjoy it.
He just got that membership to watch it. He must have known.
That's right. And remember, the North Carolina video goes open to the public this Saturday as well.
Yep.
Those are huge things that are benefits to the community. If you guys haven't been watching those things, go to the Big 12 Mafia page and just click on the videos link, and there you can see them. They're right there. In fact, I'll try to cue that up so everybody can see what it looks like at the top of the hour. Pickles, answer this question, or at least answer this statement from Ryan Willie, $5 super chat. Says Notre Dame will be in a conference again by 2026. Notre Dame put themselves in a bad spot with this plan. Notre Dame will never win a title again. And I would throw in there, this deal today, as it was announced, means that their AD or whoever their representative voted for it. So they also voted for this new plan. What do you think?
Real quick, I'd actually perfect timing. Rock and Rant and Ryan were, I believe, the first 2 super chats ever gifted on my show. So I'd like to thank them. They've been on supporting everybody, every single one of our videos. So you guys are awesome. The extra money really does help on all the stuff on the back end. But as far as Notre Dame, that was, well, it wasn't my first thought because I'm not Moen. But my second thought when I heard the news was Notre Dame outwardly is going to say, this is fine. Everything's fine. We're still special. We have a deal. Their specialness is dwindling by the day because they're so special that the best they can do now is 5th. And I think they'll outwardly say that's fine. But behind closed doors, they were either promised something or they're not happy with the situation, because everyone else that's in one of the power conferences or even G5 to a degree, they're fighting for one of 12 spots. They're fighting for one of 8 spots. They are automatically at a disadvantage every year. And I don't know if I agree with they'll never win a title again, because they're in that group of schools that if they get everything right, they could. But they're certainly, in my mind, at a big disadvantage going forward.
Anybody else want to answer that?
I do.
Here it is.
Okay.
There we go.
Cook. Let him cook now. Let him cook.
Awesome comment, Ryan. I agree with you 110%.
All right. We're going to, and this was planned ahead of time, so I want everybody to know I did talk to Immaculate about this, but he would like just a few minutes to sort of rant and review the news of that past 48 hours. So I'm going to turn over the mic to you for however long you think is appropriate, Immaculate, and tell everybody kind of what you're thinking, because this is the end of a game that we've been talking about for months and months and months.
This is probably not going to take that long. But what I want to do here real quick is say, and holding on to this, is why I think this happened today. The real reason that has not been talked about by any of the media about what pushed this to happen. And in my opinion, it actually was the ESPN talking about pulling their deal. It's the only deal on the table. It's not great, but it's the only deal. So if they talk about pulling that, that's the one thing where I would say Schultz is going to be worried about pissing off people in the room. I don't think people are too mad about him doing his thing, defending his school and their situation in this. But when it starts to affect business, where your one deal for your future is possibly being pulled, I think that caused this to happen. And I actually think this is going to cause us to see a whole bunch more deals be offered, because now the networks know something. What they didn't know before was if we were only going to pay for one or two of the first round games, if that's all we're going to get, if ESPN isn't going to play nice, we'd like to know what those games are going to be. We don't know if it's going to be the second best G5 champion in a game or if it's going to be an SEC versus Big Ten game. They don't know what they're paying for. But now that we know, I think that, number one, that ESPN deal is going to have to go up. And I think that we're going to start to get other networks coming in. So I know when we hear all the talk about this or that, in the end, it comes down to business. And there was that one tiny little thing with ESPN saying that they might pull this off the table. That's what moved this. So expect tomorrow for some crazy talk to come out of that commissioners meeting, because they now have the ability to move. They're going to be talking about things that we've probably never heard of before.
Like, give us an example.
Well, we're seeing it right now. They're talking about how many AQ positions they should have. That came out because that's going to be brought out tomorrow. That's going to be brought up between the commissioners. We're talking about maybe on the conference payout. This isn't based upon what teams are playing, but just the conferences get a particular payout. And that's actually a lot more than the per team payout. That they're now talking about making that to where it's uneven amongst the power conferences. Now, once again, as we've just pointed out, these could be negotiation points. So don't anyone kind of lose your minds over it. Remember, this is a negotiation now, but the negotiation has moved forward. And they're talking about getting these percentages because I think that now finally networks know what they're going to buy and they're going to start to come into the plate. So expect to see that. That's my big take on this is more networks are now in play. So that's pretty much it. I just wanted to say it's not about what Washington State and Oregon State got. Honestly, it's not looking like it's a lot. Maybe a little bit more money than what already was going to be there, but that's probably about it. I just think that they did not want to mess up business in their attempt to get what they want. So keep an eye out for that.
Anybody want to follow up?
I immediately thought, well, on the Notre Dame angle, I'm right with Immaculate on that. This feels like a much bigger move than I guess it feels like it's getting pub for. That the knock-on effect of this, you're really going to see come to fruition in 2026, like you've been mentioning all along.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to divert a little bit to the Wazoo Oregon State side of this, where I was assuming they had to have been given something to agree to this because Schultz was, pretending to be the iron wall and he's going to stop all of this and come hell or high water. He wants an automatic AQ conference or he's going to sink the ship. And for him to buckle like this and seemingly only get kind of a short-term financial gain, It's almost like Neville Chamberlain. He makes the peace deal with Hitler and comes back and waves it getting off the plane. And then all of a sudden he finds out Hitler invaded Poland. And that's Schultz to me. He's waving at, oh, it was great for Wazoo. We got what we wanted. It's like, you're, short-term gain, long-term loss. I don't see how that's good for you, despite the fact it's going to a 5-7. And Notre Dame is really seeing the cards stack where, not that it will happen, but the Big Ten and the SEC absolutely have the power to just blow it to pieces and start their own thing or, remake it in their own image. I don't think that's what they want because it's complicated and expensive, but they're now threatening the nuclear option.
What do you think about that?
I think that Schultz had limited leverage in this. I think that he squawked and he screamed and he did everything that he could do. But at the end of the day, he just couldn't really move the needle on anything. And we kind of knew
Right.
that was going to happen. It's unfortunate. And I really do think, too, that Oresco, some of Navarra, some of the commissioners of the G5 probably called him up and told him the magnitude of this decision for not just Wazoo and Oregon State. Like, hey, if you keep playing this game and stuff, like we're all going to get left behind. It's much greater than just Oregon State and Wazoo. And he probably understood the magnitude. So he bent on it because, again, he had no other leverage. So he got the money that you'd expect him to get. I think it was like a fair deal, honestly. I mean, really, what did he want? He was never going to get A4 status, qualified
Yeah, that
status
was
in
the big
future.
hang up for
The
sure.
asks were enormous
Yeah.
and were unrealistic, but I get it. So hopefully he saves face a little bit with Wazoo and Oregon State fan bases, because I think that he did all he could do. But at the end of the day, he kind of protected the G5.
And I think we just need to keep in mind that these are still negotiating ploys, right? And we're still in a negotiating window. They still have tomorrow, just like Immaculate said. There's still a lot of business to be done, but they had to get past the 6-6 thing. That was, there's no doubt about it. That was the biggest hang up. And now, the sludge can start to move down the hill again because that blocker's now done. So let's ask the second question. Let's assume 5-7 is the only hang up, and everything else that they want comes along pretty much at a brisk pace. Brett Yormark went out of his way to say, hey, even though I'm not in the room, I feel like I'm being informed. I feel like I'm representing and able to, change or at least direct the discussions around the negotiations for number of reserve slots, potential championship games and how they might affect how the college football playoff works. If that's the case, what is the best that we can expect for the Big 12 and I'll say ACC for now? Anybody?
Well, just on that, I mean, number one, Schultz did what he had to do for his constituents. So we'll say, did they get much for it? I don't know if we'll ever truly know. And I
wasn't talking about Schultz. I'm talking about the Big 12 and the ACC.
And I'm going to get into that right now.
Okay.
I don't necessarily believe that Schultz was all alone in this. I don't. I think that his vote served the purpose of masking other people's intentions, possibly. And I think the Big 12 has been extremely quiet. Like all we've seen from Yormark is, oh, yeah, we're talking with them. It's fine. It's good. So we don't really know where the Big 12 stands on a lot of this. In terms of this situation going on, I think this is going to be a time tomorrow starting when the Big 12 has to start to talk. Before now, not really. 5-7, of course they want it. Payouts, all that, of course they want it. But now when they start talking about extra payouts for the Big 10 and the SEC, if Yormark doesn't come out and talk, what are you guys going to think? Like, Ute and Bomber, like, what are you guys as Big 12 focused fans? What are you going to think?
Big 12 fans will be pissed.
Oh, hell yeah,
he
will.
better freaking stand up.
He's
he
gonna
will.
have to.
It's freaking baller, dude.
So that's the new stage we're in. And that's why I'm just kind of like, tomorrow's a very big day because it's kind of going to be a different world. If some of these lead advanced stories are true about what's going to be brought up by the commissioners, that's going to be a very awkward room to be in.
Yeah, I don't know. I got a feeling that this is pretty much scripted from here on out. They've had months to discuss this. I find it hard to believe that they're going to go in and everybody's going to be, hey, glad to see you. It's not like I haven't seen you 5 times a month for the last 6 months. They talk to each other constantly. So I don't think there's going to be many surprises coming out of this.
Barbara, what do you think the ask is going to be? So tomorrow's meeting, right? What do you think the revenue ask is going to be from the Big 10 and the SEC? There's been reports all over it.
Yeah, the 60% is what we've heard, right? 60% I think was widely reported today. I don't know if that was a leak or somebody guessing. I don't know where that number came from, but I find it hard to believe it's going to be that much. I could see 50. And that either way, anything more than 40% is going to kill the Big 12 and the ACC. That's it. I mean, so 50%, 60%, none of that really matters. In my opinion, anything more than 40% of all that money, the rich get richer, and it's going to be extremely difficult for these other conferences to survive. So that's my opinion. I unfortunately, I don't think there's a lot of wiggle room with that. What do you think?
I'm with you. I think that 40% is really the max that you can hemorrhage if you're the Big 12, ACC, and the G5 here without just falling completely farther and farther behind.
Right.
We're going into a land where it feels like farm systems, guys. There's been reports. Russ Dellinger put out an article a day or two ago about the farm systems. The G5s feel that way, and like it's kind of happening now in the A4. But right now, with all the leverage, the power to have, it's like the major leagues, right? Major League Baseball. You got the SEC and the Big Ten, the AAA. You've got the ACC and the Big 12. The AA, you've got the Mountain West and the AAC, and then the single A, you've got everybody else. That's like a world that it feels like we're living in right now, and it's hard to bridge those gaps and everything, and the revenue, the power gap, the voting gap, and everything else that the SEC and the Big Ten want. Put those constraints up where it does feel like there's a barrier. There's a major league and there's a AAA. And so your mark tomorrow has got to fight for it because you can't let that happen. At least you got to fight against it and try to pull lever somewhere else. But we are going into that world, and it's probably already here, and that's probably a realistic analogy right there of really where these conferences are.
I completely agree.
Another question on that, just
Sure.
based upon your guys' answers. Bomber, you think that this is probably already scripted and kind of mostly figured out, which you might be right. And while you're saying we need to see something to your mark, and I would say that's probably largely the Big 12 like fan base is what they're going to want. So does your mark have to at least put on a show, even if it's already kind of decided? Does he have to come out with some bravado and be like, guys, don't get mad at me, but I gotta go put on a show, or is that going to be too obvious? And I mean, like, what do you guys think about that? Because I'm thinking he has to put on a show, but if it's already decided, he's got to be careful.
If he did that and comes out and looks like Kirk Schultz, who did the exact same thing, it would be bad.
Okay.
I don't want to see flamboyance from him. We know he's an operator, and we know he's working to get as much from the ACC as possible. So I think
the Big 12 fan base would understand if they don't see a lot from him.
I do.
Okay.
Yeah, they're already beat down. They've been beat down for 20 years. So what's different today than what was yesterday? I don't think they care.
Yormark's the king of the Big 12. Big 12 fans love Yormark for good freaking reason, right? He plucked the four corner schools, and he saved the Big 12 conference. So this guy walks on water, and that makes sense why Big 12 fans feel that way. And they think, I think, he's going to handle it in the way that he knows how to handle it. He's a businessman. He doesn't need to pull theatrics here.
Right.
He can play calculated cool with Endeavor in his background and stuff, but the guy's going to stab you in the back, and do whatever it takes to get a leg up. He's just a killer. He really is like a Michael Jordan or Patrick Mahomes type of leader and stuff, where he's just a total killer. And so I think that he's going to get it done the best he can. I think that they've got a really good team with Endeavor and everything to maximize value and try to fight for these things, and they'll play it the best way they can.
I think that's a good point, that Endeavor is in his corner. They're partners with the Big 12 for all intents and purposes. They want to keep the business strong and vital because that's how they make money. And I think the ACC, this is the second question I had that I was going to ask you guys after we worked through that first part. The second part is, now that we know kind of 5-7 is done and they're negotiating these other things, why, if you're the Big 12, or for that matter, any of the bigger conferences, would you want to have any more votes or anything until the ACC stuff is settled? Why create rules to protect a conference that might be irrelevant in 6 to 8 months?
Because the rules you put forth could help put leverage on destroying the ACC.
It would be
If
tough to do that in the public eye, I think.
Well, look, it's going to happen. Nobody likes to see how the hamburger's made, but they love to eat hamburger.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, I get what you're saying, Mo, and I don't know if that's true
if
or
they make
not.
it a per school payout and it incentivizes people to get more Power 5 schools, Power 4 schools, that's just going to put more pressure on the ACC.
This is where I guess I'm just maybe lost, and you guys are on the track, and I'm just floating somewhere out there. I see no incentive for the Big 12 to settle anything that is associated with the ACC. I don't know why Yormark would vote to give strength to a conference that like look what Kurt Schulz did with a vote with a conference that's defunct. The conference is dead, and yet the power he took and held, I don't want to give that to the ACC.
Right, but then you're going to be waiting 2 to 3 years, Nate.
Not necessarily. Well, it depends on what happens with Florida State and the other schools that could potentially leave. It's not over.
Right. Well, one school has stepped out. The other schools have not done a thing yet. So
I understand that, and I'm
so
not saying
far
they
it's
will.
one school, so it's going to take at least 2 to 3 years to get multiple schools out of that conference.
Okay. I definitely see what you're talking about.
On that point, the Big 12 benefits if the Big 10 and the SEC can get the rest of those schools and whatever going on in the ACC to happen sooner. Because the Big 12 is not getting from the ACC until the Big 10 and the SEC.
Right. We know that.
And so the unequal payments might be a little bit more inducement for some of those ACC teams to look at this and say, okay, we really do need to get into the Big 10 and the SEC. Maybe that difference in payment adds to it a little bit more. I don't know. I have to look at all the numbers. But to that point, it does kind of seem like it's just one more, log on the fire to say, oh God, they're going to do this. We need to move now. And maybe Yormark knows that's not going to happen, but he's not going to come out and, or he'll come out and fight against it. But he knows that in the end, if that helps move those schools out of the ACC, that opens a big window for him. And even if they get less from the CFP, by getting those schools out of the ACC and to come to the Big 12, that's going to aid his efforts with Fox and ESPN on the negotiations that are about to happen. Because if he gets 4 schools out of the ACC, the 4 Western schools, all since his last TV deal, I mean, I got to think that he's got some power there to ask for a renegotiation. So I think even at the 60%, yeah, I think it's good for the Big 12 either way.
So what's the max instability that can be created for the ACC? Because what you're talking about is creating more instability and more, a bigger gap and everything where teams feel like they have to jump, like Florida State. What scenarios could you brew up that would create that situation and put more pressure on it?
To me, this is going at North Carolina board. Like their whole thing, they talked about how they wanted to have control over anyone in that system, and they were going to look at the numbers about how much it costs to go where and see if it's a good idea. To me, it's answering that directly, saying, okay, here's some numbers for you. It's going to be even more money to the Big 10 and SEC and less to the ACC. How about those numbers, North Carolina Board of Governors? That, to me, that's exactly who this is directed at. It's to get that moving, to get North Carolina State, Virginia Tech, get that whole section right there greased up a little bit, because that's probably a lot of what's holding that ACC situation up.
Pickles, you haven't said anything for a minute.
I've been mixing it up in chat, and
all right, you can stay there. You don't have to come in.
Yeah.
Up to you.
To be honest, as far as this one goes, it's kind of still so fresh to kind of think there's multiple layers of consequences. And I think it's going to take, hopefully by my Monday show, I can sort out where my position stands on this, but there's a lot of knock-on effects, like you're saying with North Carolina board, because none of these things are done in a vacuum. Nope. Who are they sending a message to? Who are they, trying to assert influence over, and so on and so forth. And who's really pulling the strings. We all assume it's the SEC and the Big Ten, but are they pulling strings for their individual conferences, or have they really got their heads together between Petiti and Sankey and said, yeah, we're really going to reshape this in our image?
Let's get a quick reminder to everybody. 135 people watching us right now. We appreciate everybody being here tonight. We're halfway through the first hour of the show. We're talking about realignment, the 5+7 college football playoff negotiations, and kind of what's next for all these conferences. The big four that we care about are the ACC, the Big 12, the Big 10, and the SEC. So if you have a question or comment and want to pass that on to us, please put it in the comment section. If I get to it, I'll definitely try to. The only ones that are guaranteed to be read are super chats. Other than that, I try to use our members' comments first, and then I go to general comments. All right, I'm going to bring up another. Yeah, go ahead, Moan.
Yeah, I just wanted to say this: 60% is the number that was thrown out. I don't think 60% is the final number. I think that's your first number you throw out to negotiate. We want 60%. Gets negotiated down to 50%. The Big 12 and the ACC split 40%. The G5 gets 10%.
I mean, that seems reasonable right there.
I mean, that's a reasonable number that I could see a lot of people arguing. I think it'd be great if it was a little bit less, but that's survival money, right?
Yeah. So
the way it was presented, though, was that it was the big in the SEC, and then everybody else gets the remainder.
Of course,
and there was no ladder there at all. So
right, but I just want to say that's going to put leverage on everybody in the ACC. There's only a few that have a chance to get into that 50%. There's only a handful.
we know who they are,
but we know there's a lot of them that have an opportunity to get into that 40%.
Yes. Well, and I think what maybe the bigger counter is the 40. If those schools leave, their conference no longer is a 40%. Their conference is now a 10% share, right?
Right. So they're getting in the lifeboats off the Titanic at that point. At that point, the Big 12 doesn't need to necessarily go to 20. They could go to 22. If there's enough viable candidates, they could go to 22. And then they've got even more revenue to disperse among their members because they're actually getting a little bit larger share as the junior in that agreement.
I got to ask you guys this, okay?
Yeah,
so
go ahead.
The Big 12 for 20 or 22 teams, and they gobble up ACC teams that the SEC and the Big pass on. Does that increase the contract? Like the media, is the media contract going to be worth more than $31 million a year?
I think so.
I think it has to.
Think of the schools you'd be picking up. Virginia Tech, we know, is a bigger brand that makes money on television. We know that Louisville is popular, definitely in Kentucky and that sort of mid. What is that even? That's bluegrass area, right? And Miami and Clemson, nobody's promised them anything. Who knows? One of those schools could end up falling down. And then you have Pitt that's sitting out there, and there's others. Obviously, that could be options. North Carolina State's the other one that stands out. But I think it does go up. I think
does it open up the pockets of ESPN if they don't extend the ACC contract? So a bunch of teams bounce over to the Big 12, and all of a sudden there's more money in the pot.
Exactly.
I'm just thinking, like, is there any way the Big 12 can get up to $35 to $38 million a year in payouts?
I think higher than that.
I think it's a 40. That's a massive deal.
They could get
$40 million is massive.
Yeah.
Look at the additions since that 31.7. I mean, first off, it's Utah, Arizona State, and Colorado. Then if you were to add who do you want to say? Louisville, Pitt, Virginia Tech, North Carolina State. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, that sure.
You look at that 8. I don't know how you don't get if Yormark doesn't get a pay increase after that. I don't know how I would look at him the same. Say, oh, maybe he's not that good. I don't know how he doesn't get it. So I'm pretty sure you're looking 35 to 40, 35 low end, 40. And then, at that point in time when he's having that negotiation, that's when he's going to push basketball. That's when he's going to talk about getting his split deal. When that happens, when you have a renegotiation window, you can do a lot of things. So that's very big for the Big 12 if this happens. And so whatever it takes for the Big 10 and the SEC to crack this ACC nut, I think the Big 12's got to be happy with it and be like,
Oh gosh, yeah, it's a huge
we'll
win.
we'll take a little bruising here on this, but we need to see them do this.
Summit Hawk's in the house tonight. How we doing, Summit Hawk? Good to see you. $9.99 super chat. He says, if the Big 12 adds 4 to 6, do they have to wait until 2031 to increase the contract?
That's right on topic right here. It's a great question, Summit Hawk. I think that you could probably trigger a renegotiation of the contract given like a big realignment event. I am not certain about that. Never looked at the TV contract, but that seems like a logical kicker that would be in a contract. So I think that they probably could initiate that sooner and not in 2031. So if this all fell apart next year, then I would hope that there would be a negotiation next year and get that 35 to 40 million bump that we're anticipating. I mean, that's just loose dollars that we're just kind of throwing out there.
Right.
But you're adding value by adding those schools that you named off: Immaculate, Virginia Tech, Pitt. That Pitt West Virginia game alone, that backyard brawl game's getting like 3 to 5 million viewers, guys. The average Big 12 game is getting about like 1 million to 1.5 million. Like you're basically getting 3-4 games in one right there. So you're adding value for your TV partners. They're gonna kick it back to you. So this is big value adds there. So I hope that it happens soon.
Yeah, if you add another 4 schools, that's 8 schools added since it. That's a 40% increase in content. And then if you look at the value of those schools, I would say at least, let's be real, it's at least 50% of the value of the Big 12. And that's I'm not trying to be like rude to anyone of the existing schools, but you got to look at that lineup of schools and say that's at least half of your value. So I don't know how you add that to a conference and still get paid the same that you once were. I think that there has to be something in that contract for renegotiation periods in terms of value increase.
Right. This is all going to be negotiated before anybody gets added.
Probably.
Yeah, they're going to know exactly what ESPN's going to pay. They're going to know what Fox is going to pay. So Yormark's not going to add people not knowing what he is getting. He's going to negotiate up. I think it's going to be closer to 40 because of the basketball rights.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Another super chat from Summit Hawk, $4.99 says the 4-pack should have added value on the 31. Can't see how it isn't reworked.
Yep.
I can. You got to remember, ESPN originally offered the pack 31 per team, and that was including Washington and Oregon in it.
Right.
Now you're adding them without Washington and Oregon at 31. So, unfortunately, and there's nothing against those 4 schools that got added, they just didn't bring the value that adding a Pitt, a Virginia Tech, a more populated East Coast territory does.
I mean, what's the big value add there, though, with these 4 schools that we're talking in the ACC? Because you're looking like at Arizona State, Arizona, Colorado, Utah. Really, are those like a cup below of Virginia Tech?
They're out west, They're out west. And you know how the West is about football and ratings. So, yes, a Pitt has a little more value than a Utah. And
we
it's
talked
nothing
about
against
this
Utah.
months
Yeah,
ago.
it's nothing against Utah as a program, as a school, as an institution.
We did
But
talk
Pitt-
about it.
Pitt has more value. Virginia Tech has more value. It's just they're in the East Coast. East Coast drives college football.
I can't
That's why
wait
the
for
pack
you.
collapsed.
Yeah, I can't wait for
No.
Ute's comparative video for the new
Yes.
four
It's coming.
coming out of
It's
the
coming.
ACC versus
Yes.
the Pac
Like,
four.
you can see the wheels turning already.
Can you be objective, Ute? That is the question.
No,
I'll
No,
try
we
to.
can't.
What do you mean I can't
No.
be? I will try to
can't
be.
be objective.
Mona, there's no way.
Do or do not. There is
same
no
level
try.
as Utah. There's no way. There's no way. They can't even get people in their stands.
Doesn't
Mona,
matter.
who cares
Does-
about Pitt?
Okay, what did you just say about the backyard brawl?
West Virginia fans care about Pitt. That's why they're
Oh.
why they're valuable.
How many people do you think there are in West Virginia?
Well, there's a huge fan base in West Virginia. They got a
There's a
massive
huge fan base. I agree with you there, but I think Pitt is in a much more populated state than Utah. It's in Pennsylvania, which you have Philadelphia and Pittsburgh markets, 2 huge television markets, and people know who Pitt is. I mean, in the East Coast, people know more about Pitt than they know about Utah. And the East Coast dollars are what drive college football.
It's not fair, Ute. Nobody said it was fair.
I'm not saying that's not fair.
They
I'm just
just
saying
don't.
I can't
They just
believe it.
anything west of the Mississippi is almost irrelevant.
I mean, that's as far as viewership numbers and stuff. People watch Utah more than Pitt.
Of course they do.
So
That's not about viewership.
fan
numbers,
base wise, there's a bigger fan base for Utah than Pitt. So like, where are these Pitt fans coming from?
I've had to educate myself diving into some of it because I'm in my schedule making and trying to allot games to certain teams. Any combination basically of Pitt, Cincinnati, West Virginia, and Virginia Tech, and even Louisville to an extent, they all have massive history and tradition of rivalries going back through various conferences and even non-conference rivalries. Like West Virginia, Virginia Tech, I knew it was a rivalry, but that one is just underneath the backyard brawl to West Virginia fans, and they're money generators. That we all remember the glory days of college football. In my mind, was you're playing the closest schools to you. You see their fans in and around where you live. That is the intensity that can drive ratings, even for schools that might not, on face value, generate those numbers.
Personally, I think there's equal value. It's a fun debate to watch you guys go. I'm having a lot of fun, but I honestly think that it's pretty equal. I think that the brands are actually bigger from those West Four, but he's right. You got markets out to the east and a bunch of rivalries. I call it a toss-up. I mean, that's a great debate because really either side could form a good argument and say no this, no this. So I think that's a fun debate to have. But to me, it's pretty equal. It's a straight shot of strong ads of 8 schools or more, or whatever it comes down to.
But to go back to Summit's question here, so the Big 12 got pro rata by adding the 4 corner schools. And the pro rata, so that's basically putting a value on those 4 corner schools of around 31 million each. I mean, that's what they got. They didn't get more. They got the 31. So as Moan's indicating here with Pitt and some other schools here, if that value lists and everything, it's hard to make an argument that that adding those schools isn't really valuable for the Big 12. And I think that the backyard brawl by itself is like adding its own property, its own team, essentially, because that rivalry game is so good and heated. I've seen that firsthand. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see how it shakes out.
Anybody else? That was a fantastic question, Summit Hawk. Thank you for posing it. I think the answer is we'll see, as it is with 99% of our stuff.
Thank you for
We'll
both those
see.
super chats, Summit Hawk.
Yeah, we appreciate it very much. All right, so we've got 10 minutes before Sergeant Pickles has to go. So, Sergeant Pickles, what do you have for kind of give everybody an idea of what's going on in your show? And do you have a question from your show last night that you want to pose to the group?
What's going on with our show? I mean, we've kind of touched on the major things this week. We covered Kliavkov, which I know you touched on, but we know Teresa Gold is now his replacement, right. Former deputy commissioner since 2018. We discussed with Immaculate. It's interesting that she was made not interim commissioner or anything, the full-on commissioner, and you only do that, I'm assuming, if she carries on into whatever next entity there is. If they join a Mountain West or if the Pac-12 doesn't sustain in some fashion, obviously she won't have a job, but she has experience in the field, 3 decades in sports entertainment. I apologize for my son arguing with my newborn screaming infants in the background.
They know what time it is.
If you can hear that. Yeah, they do. The other one covered Wazoo and Oregon State. We learned more about that today and with the vote. It's going to be really interesting. Like I said, on our show, we're going to give you a little bit more in-depth, just like we are now with the realignment. We're going to focus on West Coast football, but the question posed that we led off our show with that I want to see the remainder of the panel, I know what Immaculate's take is on this. What do you guys think about NCAA 25? Are you excited for it? Not your thing? I think the 3 of us yesterday were really fired up for the potential.
I'm so stoked. I am so stoked with the game. You know, I've already tried to persuade my wife to let me buy it, and she said no.
Wow.
It's all right. You got a few months. You
Seriously, you know,
earn
after
some
playing
brownie
20 to
points.
25 seasons with the Utes winning every freaking championship for 25 seasons with
Oh
2012,
my gosh. I
she
can
won't let
only
me play it
wait.
anymore, y'all. That's how much I love that game. So, sorry. I can't wait for you guys to play it, but you won't be playing it much.
All right, Moen, what do you think?
I'm stoked for it. It'd be nice to see Utah finally win a Rose Bowl.
Oh, gosh,
Um,
Mo, you are Moan.
I couldn't.
Yeah,
You
that
left
would
that
be nice.
shot.
You're
Oh,
right.
You
That,
left
that
that
would be
From the
nice.
top
Moan,
row.
Um,
hey, Georgia Tech, you Moan.
That
We
would
should
be
just have
nice.
Moen cook tonight. He's got him on rapid reload.
He's
But
frying me over here.
I've got my Xbox Series X. I'm ready for it. I'm ready to take on all challengers. Bring her.
Well, that's good.
Bring her.
I think this game could actually sell out consoles. So get your console quick and early because we got a lot of old gamers who have not bought that game since 2014, and they all got old consoles that aren't going to work the new one. So
Everybody needs to go buy EA stuff right now. Go out and buy EA stock.
I
They're
still
going to be
only
I
have
wouldn't go that
PS3.
All right, we got some super chats and other stuff. Let's get to some things. First of all, Mike Smith has become a YouTube member. Thank you so
Mike.
much, Mike.
about time, buddy.
Good to see you here, man. It's been a minute. Good to have you back. Appreciate your membership. Thank you for being here. Check the back end videos. We've got a bunch more since you were on that you might learn some more about. What the latest one was North Carolina, right?
North
And
Carolina's
Miami's
a
next
member
week.
Yeah, and then Georgia Tech's basically teamed up too. So we'll see when we want to release that one. But Immaculate, get ready for that
Yes.
Georgia Tech analysis.
I'm ready.
we
Did you
talking
see
about
my
Georgia
picture that I
Tech?
put out
Is
with
that
the
what-
Georgia Tech soda? Oh, I was like,
Are we talking about?
there was
Georgia
a sign.
Tech?
Oh,
We're
yeah.
talking about Georgia Tech.
Heck
Hey, I
yeah.
thought it was Georgia Tech we were talking about. What's the
Yeah.
problem?
You need a liver
All right.
transplant for that video.
Yeah, no kidding.
Really quick, I'm going to show everybody what those videos look like. And you don't need to see the rest of these people to do that. So this is on the Big 12 Mafia College Football Mafia webpage. You go to the videos section. There's the home button. Here's the videos section. And these are all the special videos that Wild U's put together. There's a bunch that we did before as well in the summer, but these are the latest ones. They're all analysis about private equity and also school evaluations for the Big Ten. North Carolina is about to go free. Clemson was done earlier, and Florida State was done before that. So that's that when we talk about that, that's what everybody's talking about. And if you're a member, you get access to those immediately when they come out. And then, of course, you have access to them when they eventually go free as well. We also had another super chat from Cleveland Rocks for $5. He says, an unknown variable is how many will subscribe to ESPN once they go all streaming. This might be somewhat problematic to the Big 12 if it is low. What do you guys think about that?
I think we're a little ways off from that. But, it's something to start thinking about when you start seeing Fox and ESPN creating one. And now we've also seen NBC and CBS talking about merging Paramount Plus and Peacock. So it seems to be a trend now. It's not just an oddity. It's kind of a trend. So could that be a step down the road a little bit further? Maybe. But, for now, it's worth watching.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
ahead,
listening to the Wilner and Canzano podcast from yesterday. Guess who they had on, guys?
Who?
Our fave,
Bob
Bob
Thompson.
Thompson,
Bob
right?
Thompson.
And he was talking about the future here, looking at streaming and everything.
Right.
And he made an amazing metaphor analogy here, and he talked about how the world, especially the media rights and like the media world, moves really slow. Like people thought that TV was going to take out radio forever, but it never did. And so his thoughts were like streaming is going to take market share away from cable and TV, but it won't take it all. It's going to take forever for it to go away completely, although that trend's going that way. So I don't think that we're going to all streaming, only streaming for ESPN anytime soon. It sounds like that's a long ways away.
Yeah,
Seems
I was
fair.
going to say you've got two generations. You've got the baby boomers and Gen X that were completely raised on cable television. Those people aren't going to just suddenly decide to go streaming for their sports. I also don't think you need to worry about the ESPN, because if this package is what they're making it out to be, it's going to be bundled with Disney Plus. It's going to be bundled with Hulu. It's going to be bundled with HBO Max. It's going to be bundled with everything. The last part I would put out there is Paramount Plus and Peacock joining together. It's probably the best move they can make, because Paramount Plus is absolute ass.
It is.
Yeah.
It's so. I mean, they got good stuff on there, but it runs like garbage. And
I
Peacock runs great, so they could just put it on Peacock servers and go.
I watched Champions League on Paramount. It's not too bad, but their client is horrible.
Yeah.
It's just brutal.
It's tough to manage it.
Pickles, do you want to answer this at all? Do you have an opinion?
The Pac-2 can leverage all that technology we heard so much about and sell it to these streamers. Maybe they can actually put a decent sports product together. But it was kind of inevitable that you would see more streamers enter the mix with serious offers and proposals. I don't think that Amazon deal was ever serious. I'm sure it was a concrete offer from them, but I think they were betting on the Pac schools having no other option. They may still, and Becky mentioned it here in chat, that Apple and Amazon may still get into the game because it's almost a new frontier, but I agree with you. It's going to be supplemental and in parallel with cable. You're still going to have people that religiously watch cable. But as part of those cable subscriptions, if you get ESPN, they'll probably throw in ESPN Plus with it as part of your package. Because if there are certain games that are streaming only, they don't want to black out fans. And I cut cable earlier this year, or actually maybe just over a year ago. And I've been able to watch every program I needed to. And it does cost money to get all these services, but I had the majority of them anyway. And I think there's a lot of people that they realize they're already subscribed to Paramount and Peacock and Hulu and all this stuff, and they have their cable package. The convenience for me, I'm obviously a little bit younger. I'm 30 years old. The convenience for me of watching my team anywhere in the world. Like, I watched the very end of the Washington-Oregon game from last year when I was sitting in Germany at like 3 a.m. and I was able to watch it. No problems. That's the convenience you're buying with the streaming portion, as much as some people resist it.
Very fair. Good assessment. Let's get to this other super chat, and then I am sad to say we have to let Pickles go. Ag List, a Kansas fan, says for $10, by the way, super chat. Thank you very much, Ag List. Or Agilist, I'm sorry. Let's say
Give that man a Jayhawk squawk.
Agilist. How would you guys say that? Agilist. I just want to get that right.
Agilist.
Agilist. Okay.
I barely passed English.
You guys were worse than I was. Okay. For $10, he says, we act like revenue generation for the Big 12 is a zero-sum game. It's not. I trust Yormark to out-innovate the Big in the SEC and find alternatives revenue sources. Let's stand and fight. RCJH, comment Allen. I don't think you heard you disagree with that.
No way. He's right on point.
We're absolutely in your corner there, Agilist. That's how we think he's going to do it.
I think
your Mark's going to use everything.
It's pronounced A Gilst if his first name is Allen.
Oh, A Gilst. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you, A Gilst. Right. Immaculate, Moen, Pickles, you want to add to that?
I would just say that it's good to get a Big 12 perspective. I asked you guys that previously about how you feel, and here's one right now who's willing to put his money where his mouth is and say that he trusts in Yormark, and whatever comes of this in this next phase that's starting tomorrow, that he's probably going to trust him and support him in what he's doing. So, respect to that.
Can't wait when Yormark uses private equity and all these innovative things that we've all talked about. He's actually going to deploy to really lift the brands in the Big 12. This is the kind of guy Yormark is. He's cutting edge. He's a complete baller. He's a baller. And I'll tell you that on the other end, like, it totally sucked seeing Yormark do his work. Like, being in the Pac-12, you remember this, Pickles? Like, Yormark was just slicing, dicing us up, dude. There's nothing we could do with George K. And now it's really fun to be on that side of the fence with Endeavor and Yormark in our court right now for the Utes and then the Big 12 and everything. And he's going to take care of the Big 12 conference. He's going to maximize basketball rights. And all Jayhawk fans know how much we're getting undershot on basketball rights too. He's going to pull – he's got to pull the Big 12 rights away from the NCAA somehow. Once that happens, the game is completely changed. And all of a sudden, like a KU becomes extremely, extremely, extremely valuable, like in the realignment game to everybody.
That would be the
And
mother of all lawsuits.
dude,
Brett
that's
Yormark and the Big 12 sues to get rights back from NCAA.
that's the one place that your market absolutely punch up big time is
I
if
think
they
so.
get back the rights, so steal back. The NCAA's stealing the rights and paying us nothing, right? But like KU basketball needs to make some money off their TV rights, man. KU basketball is like a top 5 TV draw in the
Yeah.
nation, and UNC and stuff. So Yormark's the kind of guy that's going to get that stuff done.
All right, I'm just going to let Throwback Frog sit there for a second while you go ahead and go out there, Pickles.
Yeah, just a couple. I think it's better to be lucky than good, and thankfully for Big 12 fans, Yormark is both. Lucky of opportunity and timing, but good in his execution on his plan. A lot's been said about his vision for basketball, and it makes sense. The basketball is the one thing the Big 12 can really set themselves apart as a conference. I personally think the Big 12 ceiling is more limited compared to the Big 10 and the SEC. But if Yormark can execute at a higher level, that doesn't mean that gap between them can close. As far as the zero-sum game portion of the comment, I kind of disagree. I think there's more or less there's a giant pool of money for sports, and it is zero-sum because it's just who takes what chunk of it. I don't think they're magically generating more money out of thin air because, yes, you can expand markets and try and increase fan bases, but that's a slow process over time. And if you're boosting your revenue from 31 a year for your schools to 40 a year, that's coming out of somebody else. And obviously part of that can be taken away from other conferences, but I'm really curious how much of a jump the Big 12 can see with private equity and so on, and really leaning into that basketball, because the money's got to come from somewhere. And traditionally regular season basketball, NCAA tournament's different, but regular season basketball is not a ratings and money generator.
Right. Well said, Pickles.
Very true. All right. Well, have a good night with your wife and your kids. It's good to see you. Thanks for coming on, Pickles.
Don't forget, Big West Mafia Show, Mondays, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific. We'll be wrapping up any scraps the guys leave for us going through the week, and hitting everything West Coast football coming up.
Thanks so much, Pickles. Good to see you. And thanks, Becky, for being in the crowd and doing some crowd control there in the comments. I appreciate it. We always love having you here. We'll see you later, Pickles. Thank you very much.
Have a good night, buddy.
Thank you very much for being here. And we get some claps there, Moen. All right. Now, we've been trying to do this for 2 weeks. Throwback Frog is somebody that I found on Twitter and then watched a couple of videos he created on YouTube. I don't know, Moen, can I run a video on Twitter and have it play without a problem?
Yeah, I have no reason why it would.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to run this video. I'm not going to run the whole thing because it's minutes, like 22 minutes long, but you get a small piece of kind of what he has thrown together. So let me get, I'll just let it run from the beginning. Here we go. Everybody just take a breath and watch this for a few minutes. All right, here we go.
SEC. Absolutely everything is different.
Realignment. And that offseason was dominated by conference realignment.
Conference realignment. It's all around us. And contrary to popular belief, it's been happening forever. But something is different with this modern type of realignment. Teams have always moved around because of money. Yes, even before NIL, schools cared about money. But where the concern used to be finding a place your team could play that was affordable and would give them the best chance to compete, now it's being driven by the desire to increase ratings to make as much media money as possible. This has led to trash talk between fan bases moving away from what happens on the field and instead focusing on just how great your media rights deal is and how poor the other school is in comparison. But that's not what this video is about. If you want to continue to scream into the eternal void, Elon's Twitter is still kicking. This video is going to look at the results of those moves and inevitably how moving conferences will send your team down the crapper faster than you can say Taco Bell. Okay, This is going to focus exclusively on power conferences and power teams. This isn't me saying that non-power teams don't matter. I'm just trying to keep the timestamp bearable. With that out of the way, we've got to find a starting point. And, like everything in the primordial hellscape that is college football media, it all comes back to Oklahoma.
Heavy machine
The land.
I'm going to pause it right there. The show just goes on and on and on. Okay, Throwback Frog, you can take yourself off mute and tell everybody kind of what you do and why you're here tonight.
Well, what I do is clearly make awful YouTube videos, and somehow someone thought and brought me on to a really great podcast. So thank y'all so much for bringing me on. Big fan. And
Absolutely.
Super excited to be here. Purely just love watching like kind of pseudo YouTube documentary type stuff, kind of essay format type stuff, and thought, why the hell not? Let me give it a try and see if people would respond to this or not. And I actually told myself that I wouldn't make another video if my first one didn't get at least 1,000 views. And then it definitely got more than that. So I ended up making a second video, and I'm working on a third right now. But it's not something that I expected to like set out and start doing YouTube. It's never something that I thought I would do. I've always just been more of a Twitter troll, So as the boss man said himself, just found me on Twitter just with awful opinions and a lot of really cringy Hypnotoad memes, but tis TCU.
Yeah, and I think being from TCU, I appreciate you guys a lot. We at BYU, we always love those games with TCU, so a little kindred spirit there, and try to support you. As many of you creators that are out there, yours jumped up at me, and I think somebody sent me the link. It might have been Devil Frog actually who sent me the link to your show.
Oh, God bless.
Guy's a stud, by the way. He's the one who helped me get Mafia started. So. Just a couple of questions to start off with. First, why was I not in this first video? And I know you made a second video. Why wasn't I in the second?
The important
video?
Questions.
Those are the things I want to care about tonight.
Well, I haven't set up my Patreon yet, but I think that's definitely gonna be like a tier 3 Patreon thing. Nice. And okay. I expect you to be right up there on that list,
okay.
Along with everyone else. So I look forward to that.
I can't wait.
You walked into that one.
Well, no. I actually think everything I say is so much smarter than these other guys that he put out there. So I'm just teasing. All
That's
right.
why I had to use them. I couldn't use someone that actually made sense.
Well, okay, fair enough. Touche. All right. Immaculate, Moen, and Wild Dude, have you guys seen his videos? He's done 2 so far. He's working on a 3rd.
I've actually seen some people bring it up, and I've seen it a little bit. And best way that I could describe what I saw, and I mean this 100% as a compliment, was controlled chaos.
Right.
Well, thank you for that.
And it entertained me, and I mean that in a good way, because I was laughing, going, "How does someone like to have all of this, seen all of these, and to kind of in your mind piece these together and think of all these things and to come up with?" I honestly don't know how you do it. I remember a lot of it what I've seen, but I was like, I would have never thought to grab this and grab that and where to grab what. It was actually very creative.
Well, thank you so much. I just kind of treat it as one long form meme video, so it just kind of ballooned. So thank you.
Yeah.
So Throwback, I've got a question here. So
hit me, please. Yeah.
What's like the summary or idea with the video that we were just previewing, that realignment is bad for a school making the move? That looks like it's kind of like the idea or like a thesis and stuff. What would you say about that?
Yes. And I could make a joke about you being a Utah fan, but of course I'll spare you that.
Moen's already been hitting me up today, so it's all good.
No, and thank you for that great segue. And if y'all don't cut me off, then I'll ramble just like I did in that video forever. So the gist of it is a analysis on conference realignment on a team by team basis, looking at if a team moves conferences to go to greener pastures. All right, if they move up. So the first one I talk about is Arkansas moving over to the Southwest that ends up killing or moving over to the SEC, which
Mhm.
ends up killing the Southwest.
That's right.
And they do that because they felt like they were too big for the Southwest. Well, we need to go play with the big boys in the SEC. And what's happened since? Okay. And then I research what happens to each one of these teams as they move on. Now, ironically enough, or not ironically enough, I guess, but unsurprisingly, the teams that move end up not doing as well as they did before.
Right.
Right. So you're looking at teams like Miami or West Virginia that used to be powerhouses, just dominant in their original conference. And whenever I talk about the original conference, I talk about the original conferences that started with that landmark decision in NCAA versus Oklahoma, where the conferences, and I know that y'all were talking about this earlier with the TV deals, etc. That's really what started all this off. So that's what I look at as my origin point. Really, there's only been 2 exceptions to teams that move conferences and actually find success. That being Utah going to the Pac-12 and TCU going to the Big 12. I would say that those are the only two that were exceptions. And then, not to spoil my video, but the long and short of it is my theory on the reason why is that both of those teams, the only difference is that both of those teams moved from a non-power conference to a power conference. So maybe that has a factor in it, this sense of rising the ranks, if that gives you the motivation to actually pull through, whereas you're making a lateral move from, say, the Southwest to the SEC, you're making a lateral move, right? And then the other one is that it's a movement within the region. So Utah joins the Pac-12 and fits geographically within the Pac-12 footprint. Yeah. What is another team that joined the Pac-12 that did not fit in that Pac-12 footprint, i.e. they were on the furthest outside of that footprint? Colorado. Colorado never found themselves in that conference, whereas whenever they were on playing with their teams in their region, in the Big 8 and the Big 12, they were really good. So TCU in the same way. Whenever TCU moved up, they were moving up from the Mountain West, just like y'all. I say y'all on Utah. So okay, you're moving up from a non-power conference. Along with that, you're moving to a geographic center. So TCU's was less of a we're rising the ranks and more of a we're rejoining our old Southwest brothers, because you're going back and playing schools that you've always played, like Baylor and UT and Texas Tech. So you have that sense of history there. Whereas you look at other schools like Nebraska, Virginia Tech, I already talked about Miami, they move on these islands where they're by themselves, and then they end up not having any success. And when I say not having any success, that doesn't mean that they're not good. They might be 500. I think I talked about that with Arkansas. They average just above 500 in the SEC. But the point is did you move to the SEC so you could go from being one of the most dominant teams in the sport to just being above 500 so you could get a bigger media deal? If that's the case, then congratulations. You got more money. You completely kneecapped your football team and move on down the line. I've had some Arkansas people in my comments talking about how, well, what I'm not factoring is that Arkansas is one of the richest teams and they make some of the most money of any team in FBS. Congratulations. And if you just want to walk around and talk about how much of a bag you have, that's sick, dude. I'm talking about success in the field.
Right.
So that's the very long-winded way to answer your question.
A lot of sense. What's the thought about USC's move to the Big Ten?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so the end of the video, I'm assuming that you haven't watched it all the way through. I recommend you watch it. The end of the video, I go through the 4 conference movements, the SEC movement, the Big 12 movement, Pac-12 movement, ACC movement, and it kind of progressively gets worse on my predictions of what's going on. You look at the SEC, that one, it still fits geographically. You look at the Big 12, it fits geographically. That's why I really like the addition of the 4 corner schools into the Big 12, because now you've just moved the Big 12 footprint from just being the plains to being the general West outside of the West Coast. So if you look at a map, it's still this centralized area, and you just have these outlying regions of Cincinnati and West Virginia and then UCF. The Big 10, on the other hand, is completely going bananas, where they just have 4 teams completely out on an island by themselves. So what I talked about is that might help all of them in that you're moving that entire coast together. So maybe they all get to play each other, and that kind of helps push back against the ills of moving conferences. Or maybe it brings all of them down together. We haven't really seen something like this before, so I have no idea. Based off of what's happened before, you would assume that the four of them, maybe one of them does good, but are they going to be the top dog of the Big Ten? No. I mean, it's going to be one of the teams that is geographically centered. And by centered, I mean like historically around the Big Ten Conference. You even look at Penn State, which I don't talk about in the video, but Penn State, they joined the Big Ten. Even though they are in that area, they're still just enough on the fringes to where Penn State's never been dominant like they used to be dominant whenever they have joined the Big Ten.
Wow.
So going off of the premise of the videos that I've seen, you're working on a third, right? Isn't that what you mentioned?
Yes, a little bit of a different topic, if you would say, than the first two, kind of morphing from a end point in my second video and kind of morphing from something that y'all were talking about before I hopped on here with the media situation. I'm talking about Disney to spoil it. Talking about Disney, the corporation, just upside down on streaming and how we're just trying to push out as much content as possible. And how's that working for us? Oh, we're going to combine ESPN and everything into one streaming platform.
Right.
Sweet. That worked how well on Disney Plus? Disney Plus is yet to break even in 1 quarter in its existence.
Right.
So that answers that.
So the title of the first 2 videos, so everybody knows. The first one is moving conferences will hurt your team. Right? That's the first one?
That is right.
Okay, what's the second one?
The second one is because you always got to lean into the clickbait a little bit.
Right.
I said no, the SEC. I said no, the SEC and Big Ten will not leave the rest of FBS. So that was coming out after the Alliance news. Mm-hmm. And the theory in that video, to summarize it, and again, highly recommend going and watching it. It would help me out a lot. For some reason, that second video has been put in YouTube purgatory, and it's just not.
Really?
Yeah, I've gotten likes or not likes. I've gotten views taken off of it a bunch. I don't know what it is. I don't know if YouTube thinks that I'm like a bot account because I'm so new. Whatever it is, neither here nor there.
Right.
But the idea on that second video is this kind of sensationalist news of, the SEC and Big Ten are going to pack their bags and go out and form their own division of football. Right. I disagree with that analysis for the reason of the Disney stuff I was talking about earlier. They're trying to increase content, not decrease it. It kind of is the same argument as we're not going back to the BCS system. We're not going back to a system where you only have one championship game. Why? Because it's not fair or whatever. It has nothing to do with the fairness. It's about the money.
Right.
If they're able to make money from a larger playoff, why on earth would they go back to not doing that? Especially right now when they're just trying to squeeze more and more content out. So my theory in that one was that they're still going to be the 2 more powerful conferences, but rather than trying to push themselves to move and be on their own league, they're going to restrict the playoff committee, and they're going to restrict the playoff committee by taking away auto bids. And then what happened just recently? Oh, now it's a 5-7 format. Okay, so we're seeing that movement towards just probably, my theory would be taking away auto bids altogether. Then you're going to end up seeing 5 or 6 SEC teams and 5 and 6 Big Ten teams, because it's all going to be a beauty pageant like before.
Right.
And then conferences like the Big 12 are going to have to be fighting tooth and nail against that.
Do you see the tournament expanding to 16 relatively quickly?
I would think. I don't know about the relatively quickly thing because I have no idea what the heck relatively quickly means.
That's fair.
I think it's inevitable because it makes money. It's as simple as that. Oh, it's more fair. What's best for the teams? What's fun for the sport? No, it's about the TV ratings. Those are some of the most highly rated games, and if you can get more of those, you're going to want more of those as a TV company, and then that's who's doing all this stuff. So I could see 16 being pretty soon. Is that within the next 5 years? I have no clue. I feel like right now they're probably sitting on their hands to see what the heck happens with Florida State and the rest of the ACC before they actually make a decision on what to do there. But again, that's just pure speculation by me.
Anybody have other questions?
I think it's fascinating that you think that we might go to just no auto bids at all, just a beauty pageant format where there's zero auto bids for the P2. Because
Now,
what we were talking about earlier today was a 4-4 possibility, right? That was thrown out there as a leverage point, like an anchor.
Right. And I don't disagree with that. And I think that that'd be a good idea. And I'm not saying that I think that that's what's going to end up happening. I'm saying that that's what I think is going to be the push. That's going to be the strategy from the SEC and the Big Ten. Is not going to be we're going to pack our bags and go. It's going to be, well, we should just get rid of auto bids altogether. Now, do I think that's actually going to happen? I don't think so, or at least I would hope not, because I think that would be detrimental to the sport. But I think that that's going to be their push. Because if you're the SEC or Big Ten, that's what you would want. You would want the playoff to just be your two leagues, if you can.
If I could just quick, I'd probably say two things, a little bit of feedback. One, the Penn State situation coming from the Big Ten is a little interesting because when they first joined, they were actually pretty successful.
Yes.
They've dealt with problems since then, like serious problems. And
problems that would have killed any other program.
I think they've done an excellent job of coming back from that. And I think they've shown a resiliency in the conference to where now they're actually in a position of strong power in the conference. I think they really showed off in that regard. In terms of all outside, coming in, I would say maybe we're going to see in the future if the Big Ten gets to Florida State, they're not going to have problems when they come in. In fact, I think people going up against them are going to have problems. So, and I'd say the same with Oregon. I think USC might have a tough time this year. But I think that's been a rule in the past because of the way realignments work. But I think that might be changing here. So we'll see. And Texas, Oklahoma. So I think that might have changed a little bit. We'll see.
So the additional thing on that is that just like you were pointing out, Penn State and FSU, if both of them have a different situation that comes in with them, then I would attribute that to their history as former independents that recently joined a conference.
Right.
So if they actually have success in being by themselves, being completely alone, whereas teams like Colorado, West Virginia, Miami have not, then I would attribute that to their history as being independents prior to them joining the Big Ten. But again, I have no idea, what's really going to come on that. And then along with the issues that Penn State has faced, all the teams that have struggled in all their moves have all faced problems. I don't think any of them has faced problems like Penn State has faced problems, but they've all faced problems.
That's
right?
true.
So what I was looking at was purely trying to take out if this school didn't have this bad coach, if this school didn't have this scandal, and purely look at it on a geography and a rivalry and investment. Because another thing is folks saying, well, NIL changes this because we're just going to be able to throw money at the problem. To my response to that would be, if Texas A&M was not able to become a superpower when they were the lone SEC team in Texas, and they have the money, the pockets of a small Middle Eastern country, then no, I don't think that SMU is going to be able to do that in the ACC. No, I don't think that Oregon is going to be able to just money whip their way through the Big Ten.
I think that's true. If Oregon could have done that, they would have done it in the Pac-12. They haven't won a championship yet because they're not built from the ground up. Their money thrown at a problem, and it wasn't grown intrinsically. So
and that gives you success. You'll win teams.
But you're never going to win a championship doing that.
Exactly. And if that's the standard that you're holding yourself to, then what are we doing here? Or if the standard is just to win games, then okay, then you're winning games.
Phil Knight wrote a check in 1997 and said, okay, you now are a top tier football team. That's the only time they started winning games. In the 60s, 70s, and 80s, they were not good. So anyway, don't need to get sidetracked by Oregon, sorry. Does anybody else have any questions?
I do.
Yeah, go ahead, Mom.
Hit me.
Are you familiar with the concept that correlation does not imply causation, or causation does not imply correlation?
I am aware of that.
So Penn State in 1994 does have the right to claim a national championship. They went 12-0 in the Big Ten. They won the Rose Bowl. That year there was another national champion crown, but Penn State does defy that.
But what have they done since then?
They were independent, but in 1994, throughout the 90s, Penn State was a very, very good team in the Big Ten.
Absolutely. And what have they done since that?
Well, still, it's your whole argument. Your whole argument is once you join, you fall off. But once you join, you don't necessarily fall off. If Penn State joins, and then you can't just say, well, because they were independent, it's different. I mean, it's the same scenario. It's a big school joining a conference.
So there's this thing called correlation not equaling causation. So if you're just looking at one thing, just looking at wanting to say one national championship proves that you didn't fall off, I'm looking at consistency. What have you consistently done? If you have consistently won in the same way that you consistently won before, then you've been consistent. You can have a one-off. Hit it. You got a one-off. Great job. But you are not consistently doing that year in and year out, whereas before you were.
Well, that's not true because Penn State only had 2 national championships prior to that. So hitting one off is and I mean, Penn State has been consistent. If we remove all the Michigas and the wins that were taken away, Penn State has been a consistent 9 to 11 win team in the Big Ten.
Well, they just then that would go to what is it that you define as consistency? Is it just having a lot of wins, or is it we are going to win a championship every 2 years?
Well, if you go by we're going to win a championship every 2 years within the Big Ten, that's going to be next to impossible with the run that Ohio State went on.
Correct, which is the point. Because these teams that are moving, they are not moving to say, we're going to move and be able to just consistently have 8, 9, 10 wins. They're moving to say, we're going to continue winning championships, national, not even talk about national, just conference championships over and over and over.
I don't think that's a realistic expectation. I don't think that they're thinking we have failed with this move if we're not winning a championship every third year. So I don't.
Well, let's
I'm not quite sure about that.
I'd be curious to then look at the Penn State fans who are quite upset with their current coaching staff.
That's because he's not winning the big game, and that's fair.
Correct.
But I don't think that means
he's not. What is the big game? Not winning
but
the
overall,
state championship.
It's been a good move for them. They've been successful, and it's. But that's this one thing, like among fan bases who, we're talking about fans, comes from the word fanatic. They tend to, have these beliefs of like what you got to do. It still doesn't mean it hasn't been successful. It just means this coach can't quite win that one game, and so we're going to replace him. But the program itself is very successful, I would say. And he wants to shift to Nebraska. I think that's the point you want to make. Like, go ahead and talk about Nebraska, and I'm going to sit here and just nod and be like, "Yep, I mean, I get it."
Look, there's so many schools that moved.
The other thing I would bring up about Penn State, though, is within the last 5 years, Penn State was screwed out of a playoff berth. That's an absolute fact, and I say that as an Ohio State fan. The year Ohio State went 31-0 against Clemson, that was Penn State's year, and they got effed over because of Ohio State's brand. They beat Ohio State that year. They won the Big Ten championship. They were not allowed in the playoffs. Ohio State took the spot.
I think that the big thing to sum up is that the changes that are happening now are going to get more teams to the table.
Right.
It just depends what those teams are and how they're selected, that we're now quibbling about those details. So,
hey, throwback. Let me jump in here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hit me.
Throwback. So what's I do actually agree with like this idea here. Like in Penn State might be like more of a fuzzy example, but you look at West Virginia, you look at Nebraska. There seems to be a lot of cases where you're out of your geographic footprint. I'm curious about what's driving that. Okay, that's the idea there, but what's driving it? Is because of recruiting falls off? Is it the travel? Do you have any ideas with that?
So I made a couple of theories in there. Because again, you're just looking at the geography and wondering what the heck's going on here. And some of those things that you just talked about are some of those theories. Is it just because we're no longer playing next to the teams that we used to play by? Is it that we don't have the same historical rivals? I have no idea. I think it's a combination of all of them personally. I think that the rivalry stuff that actually matters personally, because outside of fan bases going nuts, you got to think about the actual involvement from the athletic department. Now, whenever we think of athletic department involvement, usually we think of money, right? Nebraska's been throwing more and more and more and more and more money into their team, building their stadium, hiring new coaches, a crazy NIL, and somehow it's still not working. And they're still getting fans to go to the games. So I think that it's even institutionalized within the teams for them to actually give a damn or not. And that's the phrase that I use in the video on the actual teams that they're playing. So, for example, West Virginia as a team, as an institution, do y'all really care that hard about playing Kansas? Because I've seen what happens when you play teams like Penn State or Pitt, and it's a completely different environment, not from the fans. It is from the fans as well, but strictly just from the team that's on the field. Because another school of thought is, oh, well, the team's going to play whoever they line up against that week. Okay, that might be true. I think that is true to an extent. But you can watch some of these games. You watch Colorado playing Nebraska this last year. You cannot tell me that that team and the energy from that is different or is not different than whenever Colorado plays, I don't know, Oregon State. So I think that a lot of it has to do with the like bragging factor maybe, and the we want to beat up on the guys that we usually see. We want to beat up on the guys that are around us, i.e. BYU and Utah. That's why I think that BYU and Utah are set to have a lot of success whenever they're both in the same conference, because they're directly going toe-to-toe with each other in the same way that all the Texas schools are directly going toe-to-toe with all of each other. I don't think that either one of them would be as successful if one of them just up and moved to, say, the SEC or Big Ten or ACC or something like that, because you have to have that motivation, my view, of having the direct regional competitor. And then based off of my geography theory, it needs to be more than one. Because, okay, we'll move USC with UCLA. I don't know if that's enough. We'll move A&M with Missouri. Are you going to tell me that that's enough? No, A&M has not won a national championship, and they haven't won since like 39, and they haven't won a conference championship since the 90s. But it's very clear that the goal of that athletics department, be it completely incoherent or not, but the goal of that athletics department is to win SEC and national championships, and they're not doing it, even though they're spending God knows how much. So I think that it has to do with just the teams that you're playing around.
I think on the reverse end of what your theory is stating, West Virginia is in very good shape if Pitt and Virginia Tech get added to the conference. Also, to bring more life into the program, they probably lift again.
Absolutely. That's why I think that one of the best additions is Cincinnati, because you were lending a lifeline out there to West Virginia, whereas I am not very high on UCF. And that does not mean that I think that UCF is going to be like a bottom feeder, like 2-3 win team. They could be a 6, 7, 8 win team regularly, but I don't think that UCF is going to enjoy the same dominance in this conference that they did previously, because they are smack dab in the middle of nowhere based off of that footprint. They are completely by themselves.
They're in Florida though. If you're going to be in the middle of nowhere, a good place to be is Florida.
Right. But that theory didn't work well enough for A&M. Whenever A&M wasn't as far by themselves, and they were in Texas, but that still didn't work for them.
But that's personal. Okay, there's the capability with money and everything to do things, and then there's just administrators making the right choices, wrong choices, good choices that don't work out. I think that A&M has done everything that as administrative that they could do in order to be successful. It's just, for this reason or that reason, it doesn't work out. And that's kind of, as you do controlled chaos, that's the controlled chaos of sports. That sometimes it's going to go your way, sometimes it's not, sometimes it works out, sometimes it does not. But I think that A&M has done everything they possibly could to do what you're saying.
Absolutely.
So do I say that's a loss? I mean, as a fan, we could say yes, but administratively as a school, I would say no, because they had the opportunity. And that's as people who are guiding the school, that's really all you can do. And that's what UCF is doing by getting up to the Big 12 from the AAC. Even if they're on their own in Florida for a while, I mean, if you got to be all on your own, the state of Florida is a pretty good place to be all on your own in. So,
Absolutely.
There's differences in that too. It's like being all on your own in Maine, like not Maine, just throwing out a state. It's a much different thing than being all on your own in a
or
Florida.
Nebraska. Yeah.
Or Nebraska. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wow, this discussion has been awesome. I got a lot more out of it than I thought I was going to. I usually do a majority of the talking, but man, Frog, you did a fantastic job. We'd love to have you back. I think when are you going to release your next video?
That is dependent on when I get this thing out. I'm trying to not keep myself restricted to I got to pump one out every week or something like that.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't do that either. Don't let anybody dictate that to you. Whatever works for you. But I'd love to have you on, and you can walk us through what you did, and we can gin up more business for you, because I think your stuff is fantastic.
Well, thank y'all so much.
You bet.
Means a lot to me, and thank you for letting me practically take over this thing.
Oh no, these guys are asking questions. No,
good stuff, Frog. It's good stuff.
We got a really good group here, and if they're asking you questions, you've done something well. So, does anybody else have any questions for him before we let him go?
No.
Well, no, it was fun, man. You held your own in it. I thought it was a lot of fun. So good job.
Thank y'all very much.
You bet. We will have you back. Okay.
Sounds like a plan. I look forward to it.
All right. We'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.
All right, thanks, y'all.
You bet. See ya. Wow.
And that was well thought out, guys. I mean, I know that not everyone's going to agree with that. I think there's some merit to it, actually. I like it a lot. I like that idea. But really, it really was pretty soundly thought out. You have to admit
I would encourage everybody. I'm going to post the link again. Everybody go and watch these videos. They are fantastic. I encourage everybody to subscribe to his YouTube channel. That's one thing I screwed up on. I didn't let him give his spiel about his site. Okay, next time, Frog, I'll give you 5 minutes. You can tell everybody what you do and where to find your stuff. I apologize. I didn't mean to rush you out of here. So there's the link to his Twitter, and you can watch the video, the first one. And then I would go to his major page on YouTube, and you can watch the next videos that he makes. He's only got 2 out right now. Anything else before we go to people's comments and questions?
Well,
let's hear from him.
Okay, let's do it. Let's go to starred comments and questions. We're going all the way back to when we started the show. So if these are sounding a little out of order, it's because we had a full show. All right, first one is Buckshot Kid, who was one of the first people here today, says Notre Dame doesn't play a conference championship game, so it's the same amount of games if they get a bye with a conference championship game in the CFP. Analysis. What do you guys think?
I mean, he's not wrong mathematically. And like I've said, I don't think Notre Dame minds as much as some people think, because I think they especially like the idea of having a home game in the first round of the playoffs. Whereas if they were to get a bye, they wouldn't get to do that. I know folks say, well, it's easier to get through. Okay, that's fine. I just think having that is especially important for Notre Dame. I think that they want that for their branding, for their efforts to reach out and bring in students and players. So to show that, because whenever there's going to be a home game at these places, they're going to go on campus like they always do, show off. You're going to see pictures and videos. So I don't think that they're terribly upset about the idea of not getting one of those buys. It's not going to move the needle as much for them as some think.
They're never going to be number 1 overall anyway, so why does it matter?
There you
the
go.
real thing that's going to move them is the fact of the money.
No,
they're not going to get. They're going to have to divide that money between the G5, Big 12, ACC.
They're not going to want to do that.
So, how much of that money do they get out of that? So they're going to take a smaller cut than Big 10 and SEC teams get.
All right, let's go to a second comment here. We have Timothy Green says, I have something for y'all. I think Iowa Hawkeyes and Ohio State Buckeyes will play in the Big 10 championship.
I'd love to see it.
You might not be wrong. I've been saying 10 wins for sure, maybe 11 for Iowa. The cookie has crumbled in their favor with both Washington and UCLA, and their Big Ten schedule is not bad. It's basically they're going to get crushed by Ohio State, and then every other game, I think they have a good chance to win.
You don't play Penn State or Michigan?
Nope.
Okay.
They get
Anybody
both
else?
Wisconsin and Nebraska at home, Washington at home, UCLA at UCLA, but they're going to be hot garbage. So, you know.
So Timothy Green called his shot. We'll have to
Yeah, he
remember
did.
that.
Yep.
Have to remember that. Thank
Gotta
you,
respect
Timothy. Jamie Thornton, one of our members, says the harsh reality for Oregon State and Wazoo, they have to wait and try to join up with some ACC schools down the road. Maybe they get Stanford, Cal, SMU, and join forces with some BC, Wake Forest, etc. What do you think?
Yep, that's the best case scenario for Oregon State and Wazoo. That has to be the game plan. That is the best plan for them too. So the ACC's destruction is their benefit. Oregon State and Wazoo would jump and they'd realign with Cal and Stanford and the remains of the ACC that don't jump ship, and then they'd have a West pod essentially, and maybe with maybe some Mountain West or AAC additions too. But yeah, that's the best case scenario for them, and that's not a bad scenario for them, honestly, too.
I agree. Moen or Immaculate?
I'm laughing. We're getting someone commenting about the Ohio State thing being 64-0 in the championship game. So I think that on this case, from everything that we can see, I get it. Like that probably is their best move. I do think we're going to have some things pop up that might change that opinion of people. But for now, yeah, if I was Oregon State and Washington State, that's who I'd be talking to and trying to see like what's going on. Is that a possibility?
Moen?
Keep your fingers crossed for that ACC implosion, guys.
I agree. Washington State and Oregon State, that's your best escape valve is the ACC. We've been saying that for months, by the way. The Big Lubbock, another one of our members, says Notre Dame has something the Big 12 and G5 schools don't have. Notre Dame is the media darling and can get ranked higher and faster than most teams.
Not wrong.
Agree with that.
Like if they're ranked maybe 9th or 10th in that thing, you might see them get a little push because the networks want to have that home game at Notre Dame's field.
Right.
It's fascinating. I don't think Notre Dame should be a top 4 seed, guys. Like we're going back to that former comment is kind of parlaying into this too. There's just no way. They're not in a conference. If you want to be a top 4 seed, join a freaking conference and win the conference. Period.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Join a conference and win a conference. That's all you have to do.
Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, that's all they have to do. There's a lot of complaining and stuff from Irish land. Just join a freaking conference. Everybody else is in one.
Yep.
Join it if you want to be a top 4 seed.
All right, moving right along. Summit Hawk, 5 gifted memberships.
Man, he is a champion today.
Yes, he is. Waiting for Moen's claps. Moen, do you want to tell everybody what these memberships are?
Yeah, Summit Hawk, the legend, has gifted another 5 memberships to the community. If you received one of those memberships, I'll go over that here. Clayton Derry Maple, Noel Ramirez, Edward Weiner, Gary Chadwick, King Spleen. Make sure you thank Summit Hawk within the chat. If you're not available to thank them in the chat, do it on a comment after this video. After this stream goes public and goes to the video section, feel free to leave a comment for them there. Summit Hawk, thank you so much, dude. You're killing it for us. I got one more sounder I've got to play.
Okay.
I've got to play it. It's going to happen.
Let him cook. Let him cook now. Let him cook.
Oh, moving right along. All right. Thank you, Big Love, very much. Thank you, Summit Hawk. Rock and Rant, one of our members, says, if anyone thinks Miami Stadium situation is going to impact the shot at realignment, name your number and I will bet you that you're wrong. What do you guys think?
It won't. He's right. It's not going to affect anything in realignment, the stadium situation.
Immaculate?
It affects my ranking, but if what's been said is true, that they are being looked at by the presidents, then my ranking doesn't mean jack squat. And if it, I could see how it doesn't, but I still have a hard time believing that. But, we shall see.
Yeah, time will tell. Moen, you want to add anything? to
No,
that?
I agree with him completely. The stadium situation is problematic, but it's not a problem that can't be overcome by the Big Ten.
Thank you very much, Rock and Rant. Another super chat, Ryan Willie. We're $5, one of our members. Says, sorry, Immaculate, but Bucky will get revenge this year. He just had to pay $5
Better hope
to
it's not a
dance
night game.
on Iowa's
Yep.
on Iowa's
Hey,
parade.
you got to come to Iowa City for that one.
We don't know if it's a night game or not yet, do we?
Oh yeah. No,
I
I
don't
don't
know.
think we know that
I
yet.
don't remember
Okay.
hearing
I
that.
don't think they've
Night
decided.
games in Kinnick, you might as well just not even play, because in the
Yeah,
third
tell you
quarter
what, you know what
they
it
do that
looks like?
wave, and it's just awful.
At
You'll
night
lose
games, it
right
actually
away.
looks like you're in prison. That's what it looks like with the
Shut
fight in the
up,
prison yard.
people.
That's what it looks like. The black jerseys and everything's so dark. It looks like you're fighting at Alcatraz or something.
Well,
That's fine.
seriously,
Wow.
the third quarter wave is one of the best new traditions in college football, but I think it has the added effect. It puts all these positive vibes around Iowa, and
Right.
whoever's playing them during that game absolutely gets demolished.
Yeah, I wouldn't want it. Yeah, I agree.
Alcatraz.
Just saying. Next night game you watch, it closes in. It makes you look like you're watching a prison yard.
Hey, before we leave this, how do you
Yeah.
guys think Wisconsin's going to perform this year?
They're my dark
Fickle,
horse.
year
They're
two?
my dark horse in the Big Ten.
Who do they play? Do they play Washington and Oregon?
I can look it up real.
Yeah, if you want to look them up, we
Yeah,
can talk
pull up
about
that schedule.
If they play Washington and Oregon, or Washington USC, or Oregon and USC, I think they might have.
Do you want me to
sort
send
of-
it to you, or just want me to tell you?
Just tell us. Yeah, you don't need to.
Which ones were you looking to see who they play again?
Just read off the games real quick.
Yeah,
as
just
well.
read them off.
All right.
Just quick.
Western Michigan, South Dakota, Alabama,
Whew.
in Madison.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Then they get a bye, and then they go to USC. Then they have Purdue, at Rutgers, at Northwestern, Penn State at home, at Iowa. Bye. Then they play Oregon at home, then at Nebraska, then Minnesota at home. So
It's pretty favorable.
really,
It's tough.
That's
Well,
8 wins. I counted
Yeah,
8 wins.
I got 8 or 9.
I think that's
What offense are you guys watching?
They're going to clip Alabama. Are you watching?
Look,
Week 3.
Luke Fickle is the only man to take a G5 to the playoff.
All right.
I think
He's
that's
a great coach.
We'll see.
I think it might be 5 losses, but
Yeah, 8 I think would be a great season. 8
Yeah,
wins
8 or
would be
9
a
wins
great
out
season.
of that
for.
deal.
You're not going to challenge for a championship with 8 wins.
No,
though.
but I mean, that's going to be better than average in the Big Ten. Plus, he's got Mike Vrabel around this season.
Okay, all right. Maybe I'm
Bomber,
wrong.
that might get you in the 4 automatic qualifiers, though. 8 wins in the Big Ten.
Hey, fair enough. That's possible. Might get
I'm
you
serious.
in
It's
the
so
top
true.
12. That's
full
right.
circle.
All right.
Oh,
Tony Lawson for $2 says Wisconsin will be terrible. He's just dropping the hammer, not screwing around. Tony always speaking truths.
The
Let's,
Minnesota
let's go through the Gopher schedule and see
Yeah,
how many
let's
wins
go through the
there are.
Gophers.
We did that once before. Do we need to do it
We got to
again?
do it again.
No.
Oh,
Do it again.
jeez.
Come on.
All right, pull it up, Immaculate. I don't have these things ready.
Just do the quick read again.
Rob.
All right,
You guys want to go over these? I don't know. These teams
We'll
that
do
I
some
think are
deeper
going to struggle to
analysis
win.
later on, but you know what? We need to get an intuition here.
Yeah, I mean, I think Minnesota might win 6-7 games. We
You
went
know,
over it
Wisconsin,
before, and I had 6-7 in my head. So
it
Okay,
might have been
so
last year.
what is it?
this does not look right.
Okay.
But okay, all right. So it looks like this is saying they got North Carolina,
Okay.
Rhode Island, Nevada, Iowa, at Michigan, USC at home, at UCLA, off Maryland, at Illinois, at Rutgers. It's actually not that bad.
6 or 7 wins.
I think 6 or 7, which is what I had in my head.
That's
I
better
think
than
What do
the-
you,
Yeah,
Moan? What do you think?
I think Rutgers is a better team this year than Minnesota. I think Maryland's a better team this year
Didn't
than
we-
Minnesota. I think Minnesota is going to be right down near the bottom of the Big Ten.
Didn't you
Sorry,
tell us
Tony.
last year that Rutgers and Maryland were teams
Oh,
to
yeah.
beat
And
on?
what
and
happened?
You would have thought
pick
that
week
Maryland
after
What
week after
happened? Who
week.
got Grace Schiano got a huge extension because of how well Rutgers did last season. Maryland, Mike
I don't
Loxley
know.
was
I didn't
one,
win. I
the
don't
coach for
remember winning a
Maryland
lot
was
with
one of the
Rutgers.
candidates listed for Alabama. I mean,
Okay, all right.
I remember you guys saying how great Maryland was going to be a great. They
Yeah, I
played like
picked them
State
twice
or
and they
Michigan. They
sucked.
just got absolutely
Yeah.
housed.
It wasn't
Well,
even close.
that was
Like a
Michigan.
28 point. What was it? They were minus 28 to win the game, and they won by
Yeah.
like 33 or something. Anyway, doesn't matter. I want to get to this. So Go Beeves is somebody who's been active on Twitter. I think all four of us have at least seen one or two tweets from him. I see his tweets every day because I follow him. And he's asking, he wasn't on earlier when we were talking about Schultz and the college football playoff negotiation. Does anybody feel comfortable they want to rerun that really quick so he doesn't have to watch, another half hour
Yeah.
of the show later?
He didn't mishap here. He didn't make a mistake. He did all he could do. He had limited leverage, Schultz. He needed to make this decision, this 5-7 decision, for the sake of all of the G5 and not just Oregon State and Wazoo. So it was bigger than just those universities. He could get into a situation where in the future, the G5 could get left out if they piss off the A4 enough. So I don't think that he had a lot of leverage, and he used every bit he could to get as much money as he could. So Oregon State and Wazoo will get $6 million in media rights from the CFP over the next 2 years each. So he basically earned the conference and solidified $24 million for the two schools in the P2. So I don't think that it was a failure at all. I think that he fought and did the best he could.
Yeah, Bees. I'm going at it from another angle here. I think it has had a lot to do with the ESPN talk of pulling that deal. Not that that deal was that great, but it was the only one on the table. And I think where he did not want to go, where it would have been a step too far, is potentially risking a business deal for the CFP. I think a lot of what was going on before is like maneuvering, and I don't think maybe everyone would have been that angry at him. But if he would have caused that to happen, that would have been like no coming back from that. So, good on him. He's been fighting the fight that he needs to fight, but this was that situation where, okay, enough is enough. You don't want to cost business for basically the cartel is what it is. So, he fought a good fight. It's just now was time.
Moen, you want to add anything to that?
No, I think I summed it up enough.
All right, perfect. So Go Beeves, you can watch the beginning of the show. We did cover it for about the first hour, so you can get more detail. We posted links to articles and that type of thing, but we're glad you came in tonight. Good to see you. Rock and Rant says Miami didn't have success not because of conference move, but instead because of administrative neglect. Would have happened if they stayed in the Big East. What do you guys want to say about that?
I think that's going along with what we were talking about earlier, is that a move can still be good despite you not having results from it, because sometimes it's due to something else other than that. And with Miami, yeah, I definitely think you can make the argument that administrations coming in decided for some reason to try to want to change the imagery of Miami a little bit. And so they pulled back from really pushing football and tried to be more like, we're this upstanding private university that's got this really bad image problem. And so, I think that they're building that back up now, though.
Moen, or you want to add to that?
Yeah, I don't think Miami had much of a choice. The Big East was collapsing. So if they would have stayed in the Big East, they would be in much worse position. So I do agree with Rock and Rant.
Absolutely, I do too. Caleb Ramirez, one of our newer viewers, good to have you here, Caleb, says, I haven't watched it yet because I'm watching you, but Greg just put out an episode titled 4 Tiers of College Football Payouts. Check that. That we did address that article at the beginning. We didn't dive into it in depth because those estimates we think are general sort of starting negotiating points for those different payouts. But obviously Greg's a friend of the show, and If he's saying something that we haven't covered, I'd encourage everybody to check his stuff out. And we have a show tomorrow. If there's more to follow up on, we will have it tomorrow. Do you guys want to add anything to that?
I'll definitely have to check that out. I know I was talking with Greg a little bit earlier today, and he's definitely focused in on what could possibly happen tomorrow. So not surprised that he's already getting in on that.
Very good. All right. Move on to a comment from Chad Bracey. Another one of our newer members says this theory implies that Clemson would have been more successful in the SEC than the ACC if you go far enough back. I don't agree with that. Anybody? This is when we were discussing, schools moving conferences and all those other things. Anybody want to say anything about that?
Clemson and the SEC. Say Clemson would have joined the SEC, 30, 40 years ago?
Yeah, he's talking about it. They won the national title in 1980. So I'm guessing it would have been sometime after that.
I think Clemson could have found a lot of success in the SEC if they've been in for 30, 40 years. I don't know if that really would have. I don't know. I mean, you never know with these things going back 40 years. A lot of things could happen. And at that point, the SEC wasn't the current iteration of the SEC.
That's true.
The SEC wasn't even the strongest conference in the land.
Yep.
In football, and that's grown over the last 20, 25 years. So Clemson still could be a power in the SEC if they'd have joined 40, 45 years ago.
Yeah, there's a bit of hindsight to all of this that, it's good, but it's not perfect. So
right. Okay. Tim A is in the house. Good to have you here, Tim A. He says 5-7 only helps Notre Dame claim they play for a chip every year. Anyone?
It gives them another spot. So I would imagine that Notre Dame was definitely big in support of this move.
They're always going to be up there for number 5 with the G5 schools.
There you go.
He followed that up with a comment that says Notre Dame should be forced to join a conference to participate in the CFP.
That's right.
Winner.
We don't disagree with you, Tim A.
You're right on.
I never believe anyone should be forced to do anything, but if
Except
the market forces at work cause them to think, oh, we don't have a choice, well, that's their choice. So, yes, if that happens, then so be it.
Notre Dame will bend the knee. It's just a matter of time.
At this
they
point,
will bend the knee.
Yep. Jan Holk, all the way from Slovenia, says, what is Stanford's plan? What is Stanford's plan? Do they really don't want to go into one of the P3 conferences? Sorry.
What do they do if they get left out of the P3, like a future A3?
Right.
Get rid of sports.
Maybe.
They have an endowment that's like $900 billion. They're not going to give up sports.
Well, who are they going to play?
No. They'll do Olympic sports. They don't have to play football.
Right. They'll give up football and basketball.
Wait, so we're saying here that if they get left out and they don't get invited to the SEC or the Big 12,
right,
and the ACC collapses, that you think they're going to fold football?
But it would be an option. Moen's saying that would be a way for them to proceed.
I think that there is a pod formed with Wazoo and Oregon State that keeps that afloat.
No way, because they would have Mountain West teams in there like Boise State, Stanford, and Cal would never agree to it.
No,
the ACC would remain, though.
You're saying if the ACC remains, but this is
Cal, but he's saying
this is saying this is a Power 3 conference.
Power 3,
I'm
so the ACC
Big 12,
blows up.
Big 10, SEC.
Yeah, that's right.
There is no ACC in that.
The
scenario.
ACC might exist, but it doesn't have the strength that it does now.
Yeah, even if it exists as like a quasi G5 conference, I think that still makes sense for Stanford to remain. Guess what? Duke's going to be in the same situation.
Right.
So is Syracuse.
Right.
So is Boston College.
Right.
So is Wake Forest. So is Cal and Stanford.
Yeah.
Oregon State and Wazoo. There's your core.
But it's not a P3.
Definitely not a P3.
There you go.
It's not, but it's going to be above the G. So, now your debate comes in okay, if you have a P2, I'm not a believer in all these terminologies, but if you have a P2 and then Big 12 is just right below them, and now you're saying, okay, the ACC is not going to be on par with them. So are we creating another tier then for the ACC, or are we still going to say that in all intents and purposes, like the Big 12 and the ACC are still the same? Like we're saying, like if there's AQs, are they going to get the same number of AQs as the Big 12? Keep in mind that doesn't always account for just straight up football power. It accounts for within the cartel political power and how much influence they have and voting power. I'm a little bit more here with Uten that I don't think it's going to be as bad as people think. It's going to be bad, and they're going to have to rebuild it. Like it's going to be a bit of a long-term rebuild, like who they bring in and how they build it back up. But yeah, I think Stanford would rather not. They would rather do what you're saying, the worst case, like drop football, than to go be in certain groupings or give up certain things that they don't want to give up to, like to the Big Ten. Yeah, they have that much money and that much pride and that much leadership that, they'll figure out a way to do the best with it as they can.
All right, we're at the end of the show. I'm going to get a couple last comments in here, and then we're going to sign out. So this first one from Timothy Green says, I really enjoy listening to all of the different opinions on this channel. We do too. Thank you very much for being here, Timothy.
Appreciate you.
We all have different thoughts. We have different opinions. They're all valid here. And it's just a fun forum to have discussion. Your guys' ideas in the chat too are amazing and stuff. We're on top of things. That's why I love this community so much. So you're a part of that. So thank you, Timothy.
And let's get to a question from Becky Go Huskies. She says, quick question, guys. Do you see them requesting more if the ACC does implode? Could Notre Dame get an equal percentage?
No way. No way is Notre Dame getting an equal percentage. You're going to get the exact same payoff that the G5s get. They're an independent. They're a G5. The same payout as UConn's going to get out of this deal.
I think you could see a situation where Notre Dame, if the ACC gets in desperate enough situation where Notre Dame gets to move in as a full member, yet they still get to keep their Notre Dame deal to some degree. I don't know how. I'm not the guy that writes these kind of contracts. But if they get desperate enough, that you might see that type of a situation arise. And so maybe an NBC gets into business with them. I mean, they only got one game with the Big Ten. So, if they decide they want to showcase 2 games a day and it's Notre Dame, they might get into a deal with ABC with the ACC and then also put stuff on Peacock. We're talking if ESPN drops the ACC, they're going to need to deal with somebody. So I think that there's some things that they can do, and some of it we may not know. But equal percentage, I don't know. Notre Dame seems to have a lot of clout within the ACC. They can equal voting rights.
Ute or Moen, anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, clout's a nice way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right.
It is.
Well,
yep,
we can bottom line it there. I appreciate everybody being here tonight. We had a very lively comment section. Again, over 1,000 comments. I don't know how we do that every time we have a show, but we appreciate everybody being here and participating. If you wouldn't mind, take a second, make sure you subscribe to the channel on YouTube, turn on your notifications on both YouTube and on Twitter, and then follow us all on Twitter as well. That way you know when our next shows are. The next show that we have on the schedule right this second is on Wednesday, tomorrow at 8 Eastern, and it'll be me and Moen and maybe Immaculate if he's bored, and we will see what's going on, and I appreciate everybody being here. Wow, we've got a last minute super chat here from Sergeant Pickles. What are you doing, Pickles? He says, my compliments to the fantastic panel, but that bald guy at the beginning was annoying. Cheers. He's talking about himself.
I like the trimmed beard, Sergeant Pickles.
We love having you here, Pickles. You and Becky have done amazing work, and the bright and shiny vista that you have in front of you, I think, is going to be really fun, and we're looking forward to that. Other than that, guys, do you want to say anything else? We're out the door.
Go Utes.
just be ready. Tomorrow's going to be a big day. And yeah, I probably will come around and join you guys. I think there's going to be a lot to talk about. It's going to be a lot of fun.
All right. Well, we'll do that. Everybody stay out of trouble. If you've been drinking, Georgia Tech, do not drive. And everybody have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow night. Peace out.